We're recording. Go ahead.
Cool. Hi everyone, Rob here from Dudes and Dogs. Hope you are well. After Jason and I spoke yesterday, we thought it was really important to come and do a little section around reflection as well, because if you do have these chats, it's quite good to reflect on these things. In fact, it's really important that you do, especially if it's brought up any emotions or feelings, to help understand when we talk about name and normalizing. And I kind of realized this morning, well, both of us did, but myself in particular, that it had created a real response and a bit of a trigger of something for me as well.
So Rob, for you, you thought more about this issue of identity, because that's what we kind of touched upon yesterday, and your identity in terms of kind of sport and your kind of participation in sport. So what did you kind of come up with after we talked?
Yeah, so I came away from the call and realised there's something which I've always been aware of that's had this impact, but I'm also aware that I probably never addressed it properly. And that was around the discussion we're having around my sport and how that was so important to me and how I played a lot when I was younger and then I lost it. A very long story made short is I had quite a severe back injury when I was in my late teens, when I was travelling. Up to that point, I was a very good sportsman and could have done very well with it. And I had to stop playing, more or less. When I sort of look at trigger moments in my life or key moments in my life that have had a big impact, I realized that was one of them, because sport was my identity, but it was also my connection. It was my extended family, having a team. It was my way of feeling like I contributed in some way, whether that's in a team game or coaching. And because I could no longer play it, I hid from it. And I immediately, in one foul swoop, lost all that. Yeah. And reflecting back on the conversation we had yesterday, I don't think I've ever really properly got over that loss, or replaced it, in fact.
Yeah. And we all go through changes in our identity throughout our lives, right? And sometimes something that's a very big part of your life, a very big part of your identity, suddenly changes, and it's actually a really massive adjustment, isn't it? And I think I can think about kind of a similar experience where I was widowed after a long cancer battle of many years, and I went from being a full-time carer essentially one day, and the very next day my caring role had 100% disappeared. And because it was such a big part of my life, you know, I had a really big job trying to almost kind of rebuild or kind of find some new kind of identity or identities or things that kind of described me or made up my life. And it takes some time. It can have a massive effect, and it sounds like it did for you.
Yeah, that must. Where do you start with that process?
I think for people who, like, for me personally, I was kind of standing still, kind of treading water for quite a long time, because there's a bit of kind of a shock. It's about a bit kind of surreal, really. I don't know what kind of happened for you, but it was, you know, I didn't know what to do for quite a while, and I didn't really do anything for quite a long time, and then I very, very slowly started doing things. Start doing things again in my life. And I think through my activities and trying to rebuild a bit of a routine, like identities kind of just started to almost, you know, indirectly or unconsciously evolve from there. What happened for you after your injury?
So I had to go through about, well, I'd say it was 3 years of rehab. So it kind of all hung around for a long time. Yeah. But then I sort of always had further back injuries. So about 4 years after I broke my back, a disc went and I had to have an operation on that. So I just kept being sort of hampered by it. And it's, you know what it is, Jason, actually, and I've never thought it until just now. I think my identity as a sportsman and being this healthy, fit person was replaced by an identity of someone with a bad back.
Yeah.
And that was what I replaced it with, rather than something healthier.
There couldn't be two different identities, right? Because one's about using your body and being physically able, to the opposite of that being something wrong, broken with my kind of body. And I think people don't realize sometimes how devastating this can be, what a profound effect it can be. But if you think about things from this perspective, this idea of kind of identities, it might be helpful for some people to kind of understand what they experience, what their kind of reaction is to it. And you do have to kind of rebuild, or
Yeah.
I'm trying not to use really
Go on, use it. Use a wanky word.
I'm not trying to use terminology that makes me sound like a psychologist.
Well, you are, so go on.
Yeah, but you've got to kind of reform, rebuild, kind of renegotiate with yourself, kind of who you are. But it can be done. But I think a really important thing is just to kind of be aware that these things can happen, and it's kind of devastating, and we need some kind of time just to rebuild that, or develop a different sense of who we are.
Also, mate, just on that, thanks for sharing that stuff about you as well, because I
You
appreciate
too.
that. It's very personal to you. And the reason I'm thanking you as well is because one of the traps I've fallen into in the past is going, oh fuck, oh god, I don't know if we can swear on these things, so I probably shouldn't. Going,
it's all right.
My trauma is not as bad as your trauma. My loss isn't as bad as your loss, and it's really important that you don't fall into that, because the trauma to you is individual and personal, and it's not about sort of comparing the two.
But Rob, I'm not sure what good that does you or anyone saying, making comparisons. Someone saying, oh, what I went through wasn't as bad as what you went through, because it's almost like it's real self-criticism, isn't it? Basically you're saying what I went through wasn't as bad, or it's kind of it's a bit invalidating towards yourself, isn't it?
But I think it's probably a pattern that a lot of people fall into as well.
Yeah, really common, and I've done it.
Yeah.
Well, but I guess it's another thing to be aware of, right? When we make that comparison, ask yourself, where does it take you? Ultimately, is that
ultimately
helpful?
when? Yeah. And will it help you overcome your dealing with your issue? Because that's the important thing.
Because regardless of whether you're kind of right or wrong, anyway, I mean, what really matters is, does this help me making this comparison? Does this help me move towards where I want to go? And try and rebuild your own identity, I don't think that's going to be particularly helpful, is it?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yeah. It's really interesting.
Good chat.
Yeah, so I think that's hopefully it's kind of some useful thoughts for people to follow up on yesterday's chat.
Yeah, and if anything's brought up by our chats as well, please feel free to obviously comment below and tell us what that is, and it's something we could potentially discuss again next week as well.
Yeah, and people can throw kind of follow-up ideas around kind of topics they want us to talk about, because we can
100%.
definitely look at that. 100%. Yeah. Cool. All right, thanks for that.
Also been told I need to end these videos with a like and subscribe request, so like and subscribe.
Cool. All right. Talk to you soon.
Take care, mate.
Everyone. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.
They stopped recording. Oh, that went all right, didn't it?